Okay. Right. God bless and welcome again. My name is Leonard Smith, pastor of Agape Missional Christian Church Apostolic, and this is Faith and Family Conversations. An open conversation that we have every week, really to try to, from a church's perspective, look at the issues that affect us as well as the community that we live in. And we hope to find solutions and ways forward in our conversation. So welcome. This topic for this conversation, this evening's conversation is masculinity. What does that mean? Masculinity, what does that mean? Continuing on our theme for, of gender-related issues for this month. And we had started a conversation on male marginalization earlier this month. This evening, we have invited Mr. Winston Scott, counselor from Family Life Ministries, to help us out with some of the perspectives and to share his own perspective as a Christian, as a counselor, and also to help us out when it comes to trying to resolve some of the issues that may be involved with that teenager or that man who somehow is not connecting with his family, has lost his identity, and not connecting with God, is not in church. How do we move these men forward? So, as is our custom, we just take a round robin of introduction. If we hope that everyone will feel comfortable to share in these spaces. We are trying and we seek to create safe spaces where conversations can be had about any issue that affects us as individuals. And so we want persons to feel comfortable, even if this is the first time that you are here. It doesn't matter. We want you to feel like your family and just to share your thoughts. So I'm going to go around robin in terms of just asking persons who I'm seeing here just to share. And we just usually just say our names so that when we're in the conversation, we can refer to each other by name, and either where you work or where you worship, and or both, just to keep it simple. And so I'm going to start with who is on the top of my participants list. Lady Smith, I see you. You want to just go ahead and introduce yourself?
Blessings and good night, everyone. My name is Claudine Smith, and I worship at Agape Missional Christian Church.
Sir Barnett.
All right. Blessings, everyone. I'm Andrew Barnett from Faith Apostolic Ministries.
I see a Carlene in the group. Don't know if she's seeing us because I'm not seeing her video, but she may be hearing us. If you want to share your name and where you worship or work, anywhere, anyone.
My name is Carlene, and I worship at Access Community Church, Hamilton, Canada. I
was wondering if that was you, Carlene. God bless you.
Yes.
I see a Patrick's Galaxy A11. I'm not sure who that is, but if you want to introduce yourself, feel free to do so. This is your window. Going once, going twice, and we are going to Tasha. I see Tasha here. This is your window to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Natasha.
Hi, Natasha. I was wondering if that was your phone. Okay. And I'm going to introduce again Mr. Winston Scott, who is, as I said before, a counselor from Family Life Ministries, himself also a pastor, and someone clearly that is has a vested interest in the value of this conversation. He's married, he has a family, you know, been married for 38 years, has 2 adult daughters and 4 grandchildren. I didn't ask if any of those grandchildren were male, but I'm sure he'll be willing to share that with us as well. You know, I've been in the Christian ministry for over 30 years, and he's just gonna come in to help us out and to share some of his insights in this conversation. So, so by way of a brief introduction, you know, we had discussed last week, not last week, week before last, started a conversation on, you know, men, you know, being marginalized, not being in the family, not being in church as much as women. I had located this graph that kind of paints a picture in the US of, you know, men in proportion to women, and it's to understand it, you have to keep your eye on the middle line, which is the 100 line. Any line that is above the middle line for that particular group says that that group has more men in their group than women. Any bar that is below the 100 means that it has more women than it has men. And I circled the group representing historically Black Protestants in the US, that the Black church has a greater discrepancy of men when it comes to women in their church. And this study had highlighted some issues, some social issues that related to this why, for example, the other 2 bars before were mainly white evangelical Protestants. And so we see that their difference is close to normal. And so we were exploring some of the reasons, and in this conversation, what we wanted to focus on is one of those possible issues, the issue of, you know, male identity, and the fact that it does appear that because the culture is changing, the identity of not just male, but also females in some respects, and the roles seem to be shifting. And of course, that in and of itself is a contributor to some of the challenges that we have. And I did not mention my our quote for the week, taken from a study, and I look into that a little bit more detail. It says, American evangelical men experience 3 competing ideals of masculinity. So we're looking at the topic of being what is being male today, but this study was a historical look at what, you know, how male was defined in society. And American evangelical men experience 3 competing ideals for masculinity. 1, the aristocratic male, the skilled artisan male, and the passionate male. You know, these are the forms 3 different ideas, and I'll just mention them and then, you know, begin to throw out you know, our questions and invite our counselor here first to share his thoughts on his conception of what it means to be a male. But these 3 concepts came out of this historical study, and it involved evangelical men, but it is not necessarily a biblical position of what male identity was. They just seem to have adopted these ideas of what it means to be a man, probably pulling it more from culture than they did from the Bible. But this is what it is. So these 3 males. So aristocratic, the aristocratic ideal, they define that a man's identity was inseparable from the duties he owed to his community. This is like the old world, you know. So if you think about, you know, the patriarchs or even the biblical men, they were men who were known in the gates, for example, you know, men who that seemed to identify them as the, you know, if the virtuous woman was a woman who was able to, you know, support and do well with her hand to take care of her family. A man's identity seemed to have been if he was known in the gates, if he had contributed to his society or his community. And it was also a sense of his, what would you call his inheritance or his heritage. his lineage defines the identity. And if you see in the Bible, a lot of lineage. But it came down, this is like, in the 17th century or, 16th century, the identity seemed to have been closely related to people's inheritance. After a while, it began to shift when, job began to explode. The focus shifted from the lineage kind of identity for men to the skilled laborer, the working man, the businessman, the gentleman, in the 1880s to the 1780s to the 1820s. So this is the gentleman model. To be a man means to be somebody who is working and who is making, doing things to advance his, occupation and the occupation of others. Probably around about time of the, the Industrial Revolution, that period of time, probably. Don't remember the date if they coincide, but then that became the ideal man, the gentleman, one who is working, and achieving, the achieving man. And that gave way to something close to probably what we have, which this author defined as the passionate man, man that is, the male ideal is inseparable from the man's own identity of himself. So he's, has shifted, become disconnected with the kind of a religious models of men that were there. It is really not about, self-actualization. It's really about my being, my own man. Their spirituality has shifted to a kind of an internal spirituality. They're really about themselves, shifted away from God. And so to be a man now is just to, to be yourself and to, to create your own identity in society. And of course, in doing that, some things had already shifted. Men would have been on the outskirts of society because not everybody could find a job, not everybody could earn, and so everybody was just going for themselves. So just to paint a kind of a historical picture of what manhood, has evolved, but the question that this author had pointed to us. So he had said, and I'll quote something that he said, which I think was very useful. If left, male absence from the home is not something that is new. It left when Victorian husbands transferred their spiritual responsibilities to their spouses and channel their energies into competing as skilled artisans or passionate men, right? So they were just trying to find these male ideals, and in the process of trying to find these things, they said, woman, you need to stay at home because I need to go and find myself or make my own name or, find my own place in society. And but something was left behind. They gave over the spiritual responsibility. So the women were not just only taking care of the children. Of course, when the men departed, they ended up departing and the families broke up. The women were also doing some of the same work that the men left to go and do and could not find because of all sorts of reasons. But also a third thing that they seemed to have taken on was the responsibility, the spiritual responsibility for their children and for the home. And so, this phenomenon occurred based on this author. So the question that we are deliberating over in this conversation is, so what should we teach our boys about masculinity? What should we teach our boys about masculinity? So I'm gonna invite you, Sir Scott, based on your own experiences. I don't know if you wanted to share anything via screen, or you're just going to have a conversation, but we want to hear your thoughts on, in general, what a response to this question, and then I'm going to canvas the the audience here. What is your perspective on man? What it means to be a man today, based on your experiences. But Mr. Scott, I want to introduce you and invite you to share your thoughts on this topic. All right, I see your mic is still off. So you can go ahead and turn on your mic. Let's see if we can get that. Let me see if we can. We're hearing you now.
You hearing me now?
Yes, definitely hearing you, sir. Welcome.
Okay. Yeah, man. Yeah.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, man. Good to be with you. And
Yes.
to join in your conversation. I don't know how long it will go on.
Right. So we usually have about an hour and a half for this conversation. Yes.
Yeah, I can stay for about 8:50 because I have another engagement. I thought it was from 7 to 8. But as you can see, I'm a man. And I have 2 grandkids. They are 6. The oldest is 6, so they are pretty young.
Okay.
Two girls and 2 boys.
Okay.
I would come with, as you would understand, a biblical perspective, because that's where I'm grounded.
Yes.
And I think I would have to go back to the Genesis account.
Yes.
Which is foundational, because I believe that's where we can find our identity as how God created man. And in that discourse, man was primarily a provider. And as you shared on the different definition, I can see underlying those terms is a part of provision. Because in the American context that you share, yes, the early settlers, right? They would have provided for their family. I mean, the means of provision was different, but that was their primary responsibility.
Yeah.
Then we talk now with the Industrial Revolution, where things shift now from as you say, with more skills.
Yes.
And we are now in an era where it is not so much a man identity by the job he owns, but by his skills and ability. In the Jamaican context, the similarity would be probably from the plantation to that period of slavery. Then we had economic activity where men could now get jobs and work. And today we are seeing more and more young men are creating their own jobs and identifying themselves. So I would agree that there's probably underlying term or underlying definition in all of this is a man is a provider. A man ought to be a provider. And when he loses that ability, I think it detracts from his manhood. And that's part of the challenge we face here in the Caribbean. Men are not sometimes standing up to their responsibility because they cannot provide. And so part of the marginalization and to bring them into society is how can they become good providers. And once they can provide, now they probably pick up some of the other responsibilities. That's what my own.
Okay, excellent. So let me throw it out to us. We seem to, is there a consensus here that there is a challenge with an identity crisis with men? Let us not assume that. Is there a consensus here that there is an identity crisis that men, so Mr. Patrick painted an image of a man primarily as a provider. Is there an identity crisis that we are dealing with now, or do we think that men know themselves? And so I'm gonna throw it out. Well, Sir Andrew, you're one of the few men that are with us here, and I see Sir Patrick is also here with us. Your thoughts. Is there a crisis, an identity crisis, whether it is in the society or in the church, as far as, in your opinion, and opinions, of course, this is a conversation, so opinions are welcome here. Is there an identity crisis in the church and in society in general?
Well, so I just don't like the words that seem to engender fear and panic and hysteria. Crisis
Right. No, that's perfectly fine.
Like the world is coming to an end or something of the sort. But, there is, I would say, a lot of misconceptions There's a lot of misconception as to what masculinity is or what it ought to be. The source of that is many as they are varied, but you tend a lot of to see individuals, male, where the focus is just, even if they are working and they're in a position where they're employed and they are earning, and you find that some of them, the earning is not translating into the whole business of, okay, provision, making provision for your family, which I believe is as I don't remember the gentleman you said earlier, you can't separate, right? You can't separate your role as provider, from being male, from the whole masculine role and responsibility. But you find that some who probably that responsibility is probably second or third, maybe even fourth. All right, but there are other things that have taken preeminence. Self, it's more, it's like, okay, so this is me, and I have to present a certain, all right, to my friends, to my colleagues. I have to ensure that I'm always attired in the latest and the most expensive. Never mind the fact that you might have a child at home that's probably hungry, but I have to buy that expensive shoes. I'm not gonna forego that to buy a cheap one so that I can probably pay the school fee or whatever the case might be. And so I think there are some misconceptions on the part of some, where the role of providing for one's family, for those who do have a family, that role and responsibilities doesn't seem to be the most prominent of roles and responsibilities. And we have even seen instances where, I talk with young men, young boys. Yes, I work in the high school. Yeah. All right, and they are more preoccupied with acquiring things, material stuff, having a girlfriend or a few, all right, maybe a few baby mother. That is their ideal of, this is life. But when you talk with them, you don't hear that, okay, then, I have a responsibility. If I do get involved with a female, then I have a responsibility to ensure that, the family is well looked after and protected. You don't get that kind of a thing from them. But it's just a matter of, the hype life and that the bling and that kind of stuff. Again, and I'm talking about those who don't necessarily grow up in a church context. All right, when I converse with them, that's the kind of question you get from them. So I think there's definitely some misconceptions, which is proven to be quite, I said, unfortunately, to be a nice word, quite costly. If not, as you said, bordering on a crisis.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Anybody else? Lady Carleen, this is your first time here. Don't know if you wanted to share. And of course, you're coming from Canada, different jurisdiction there. Do the men know themselves in Canada? It's a good question to ask. Do the men know themselves in Canada? Do the men know themselves in the Canadian church? From your experience, that would be good to hear if you're hearing me, Lady Carleen.
Yes. Good evening. From coming from my church where I worship, the men do know themselves because they've been coming from a spiritual background from they were young. So they were brought up knowing that they are the provider of their families. Okay,
so you're fitting and agreeing with Mr. Scott's model in terms of what it means to be a man.
Yes.
Okay.
They know their responsibility as fathers, and because of that, they know how their masculinity plays a part in their lives and in the lives of their sons, because many of them have sons. Right. So I myself have a son who I am trying to teach him that to be masculine doesn't mean you have to give up your emotions, which is what a lot of people, I find a lot of young men are saying to be masculine mean you have to not be compassionate. You don't have to be loving and all of those things, but that has nothing to do with your masculinity.
Yeah.
Right? Because in order to be an influential masculine male, you have to show all of those attributes.
Understood.
Because you're teaching your sons and also your daughters how to show emotion but still be strong.
Yeah.
And also how to provide for your family and still hold your own in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You use an excellent word there, not to cut you, but it's a useful segue, because the challenge that somebody on the street, a man on the street sitting on the wall, because we'll probably have, it's clearly, well, there is no job that I am skilled to do. I had a hard life. I ended up, dropping out of school early, so I don't have a skill. And so I am an at-risk youth, in my society. We would look at that man and say, boy, you're not a man yet. You're not being a man. You need to be a man. And in order to be a man, you need to find a work. There is no work for him to find, and of course, again, being in a vulnerable society needs some support in order to get there. But society basically sending the message to this man that you're not a man yet. You're probably a man too, because you're not work. What is the response? A good proportion of men are simply not. The job's identity is difficult. I hear you also mention something else, though, which seems to add another dimension to male identity, which is why to be a man means to not, to either be rough. To be a man needs to be, it is the machismo thing. To be a man, the macho thing. And so therefore, they are looking to those other forms of identity, things to identify themselves with. Are there other dimensions to what it means to be a man that we need to be paying attention to? Or do we need to tell society, listen? And again, somebody will also say to me, boy, there's this man who is working and he's taking care of his family. He's giving the food and he's giving the but yet still he had a son that he is completely emotionally disconnected from. His wife, who can't see him coming home at nighttime, and all that this man has in his mind is, sister, me not give her food. I take care of her. So, when them are complaining about me not take care of them, are there additional dimensions to the identity that we probably need to consider in trying to help some of these men to move forward? Or do we kind of leave them, try to fit them into the model and see if we can get our men working, get more call centers out here, man. I see your mic is open, Mr. Scott. Yeah, you wanted to chime in on that broader dimension, or do we try to see if we can fit them well into the, get them to be providers?
Well, as you said, we have a struggle here in Jamaica where probably many of our churches or many of the organization not able to reach these young men who we really want to reach. Because part of understanding themselves, two things. One part of it is spirituality, and we know because a man not going to really be a man until him know God in.
There you go. There you go.
No matter what we say, no matter what forum, no matter what definition, I still believe a man can only be a man when he understands who he is and carry out that. But granted, as you say, how do we now reach these men? One other thing I noticed, and I've been, reading the Sunday paper, there are so many individuals who are finding their passion. Finding their passion, they are making either an income or a living from it. And That is a direction I see more and more, where people not just about I'm going to university, I'm going to get a skill, and I'm going to come back out and work for somebody, but is that I'm identifying my passion
Mm-hmm.
from how I am able to generate some income.
Okay.
I would say probably out of every 10 story I read, probably about 7 are women.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Some of these have become artists, some have become authors, some have become all of that, and making some money. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the traditional way of boy, I have a skill or I have a that, I'm finding my passion. So part of the struggle is if we can get to these individuals and help them to identify what is their passion. What is
Mm-hmm.
their what is it they are good at?
Mm-hmm.
See, let them know to say, well, yeah, you're good at this, you can make some money from it.
Mm-hmm.
You can help to improve yourself. So instead of the traditional way, so boy, again, put in a call center, again, this or that. Look what skills are what you're good at, and how can you make some money out of it. Probably that would help.
Yeah, your mic seemed to be going a little bit low there. Yes, right. But yes, but I get the gist of your point in terms of trying to get men to identify their passion. And again, you know, the thrust is towards getting moving men towards the definition of masculinity, you know, connecting it with provider, you know, being the caregiver. You know, are the men, I'm not sure, but are men resonating with this identity? You know, because in order for us to be able to get them in that direction, they must, you know, what are they identifying, or is that resonating with them, that my primary role, you know, because we have some men, of course, you know, and probably some of the women would not be shy to say that, boy, we have a lot of worthless man in society. You know, these are men who either not working or don't want to work, and or they may be doing something, but they do not taking care of their family. There's still that, I mean, men who are working, men who are fitting this model of at least having the capacity to provide, but are simply not providing. Right? They are simply not connecting with family for some strange reason. Is there a relationship between the lack of identity and they're not connecting? They're not getting married, they're not connecting with their families, and of course they're also being less in church. Is there a connection? Is there an identity? Well, you know, Sir Andrew, you don't want to use the word Christ. Is there an identity issue related with men? So sufficient to say that, because I mean, I don't know that should prevent the man from coming to church, which is one study said that the socio-economic issue that prevents them from, you know, God is not asking them necessarily for their money, you know, they can still believe in God. Is the identity issue affecting them being in church? Is the identity issue affecting them still being a part of a family? Sir Scott, and then anybody else, is the identity issue that we've identified really causing them to not be in church? Let's start with that one.
I would say yes. And you know, we have that struggle. If you pastor a church are involved in the pastor, I mean, as you say, yeah, there's a struggle.
And don't have any, your mic is going up and down. If you're pastor a church, and say that again.
No, I'm saying if you pastor a church are involved in the pastor, that is one of the things how we get men in.
Mm-hmm. Right.
As you say, the traditional way, obviously not working as well as it should.
Mm-hmm.
Generation and your generation and my generation face is how we know connect with these men. And we're having that struggle, as you say, the men them now gonna come.
Mm.
We have to go to them. In other words, we have to talk to them, we have to reason with them. But sometimes it's difficult because you are not on the street corner, you sometimes can't connect with them that easy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You come, they don't believe what you're telling them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say yes, there is a there is an identity crisis. And what you notice now, many of our young men is pursuing, everybody wants on a dancer.
Mm.
You understand? Because they believe that this is to make it.
Right. Well, that and that seemed to fit into the passionate male ideal that, you know, the study that I alluded to, that men today really, they're not connecting with the provider. They're not connecting with the heritage. They now we are Africans, we are slaves, what kind of a heritage we have. So now everybody just kind of reinventing themselves and coming into their own self, and they're just going after their passion. That's where male identity seem to be no, and that seemed to be creating that crisis in the church. All right? Would that be fair to say that, as you're saying, that they you know, they want to be dancers, they want to pursue their passion, they want to be, you know, these high flying things, whatever they've seen on TV. And that's what they're connecting their identity with. So it seems like we are likely to have, if you know, a challenge if we are not able to restore this understanding of what it means to be male. You know, I'm gonna try to bring in a couple of, you know, our ladies here just to share your thoughts. Lady Sherian, I see you came in here. I see Lady Tanisha, I see you're here with us. Tasha, you fell off and you're back with us. You know, male identity. What is your conception of male identity, and what do you think is the if there's an issue with that here from some additional female perspective, because of course, if we don't have the men in the church and being themselves in the church, of course, it creates a challenge, an issue, of course, of discipleship within the church, and of course in the society we're seeing it's creating all this violence that's taking place there now. So any of you ladies want to share? Let me start with you, Lady Sherian. You know, masculinity. What does it mean to be a man? Or what is your expectation? Is probably what I should be asking. What is your expectation of somebody in your life who claims to be a man or should be a man? Let me ask for the expectations. Lady Sherian.
All right. So basically what I would give now is, in a nutshell, I know that I won't give all the details that it's truth be told, it's sitting down and thinking about it all and saying, hey, this is the list. But let me see what I can come up with in about a few seconds. Someone who is protector. Okay. And by protector, I don't just mean a physical protector. Somebody who will protect my spirit, protect my space, protect, just protect things that are in regards to me, my family. And for me in particular, having a son already, I'm expecting that as well.
Protector, okay, so I hear that.
So protector, of course, provider, like everybody, Yes.
But you're working class. I mean, you're probably making enough money there to take care of the family. You're still looking for a provider.
Yeah, but though it be a case where I am doing that, I don't want it to be a case where just because I'm making money, it means you step away.
Okay.
It means that you will just throw it at me and say, you know what, take care of everything because you're making money.
Right.
I don't want that.
Right.
Okay. Someone, go ahead.
No, provider, protector.
Okay. Right. Somebody who is emotional support in general.
Right.
But emotional support is very important.
Okay.
Somebody who is a great listener, somebody who is, will be there to sit down and talk with me about anything, everything.
Yeah.
The whole works. Great father to, my existing child and my unborn, whatever kids are coming along the way, if they do. Then yes, great family, somebody who's family oriented, etc. I don't know if I can continue, but basically that's general idea. Somebody who is saved. Really saved.
Yes, really
Yeah.
saved. There you go.
Yeah, man. We don't mean the
really
fake saved. Saved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Tanisha, if you're hearing me, what would be your expectation in terms of what men should be, based on the, your expectations in general? Going once, going twice, not sure.
I'm right here, but I was hoping that you would not call on me.
Everybody comes into the conversation hoping that I won't call on them. So that's probably what the sure reason to way to get called on. I probably can sense that reason to the conversation, but no problem. You don't have to share it, beyond the level that you are comfortable. Again, this is intended to be a safe space. And even if you don't feel like sharing, please feel safe. But your expectation, if you have any thoughts you want to share with that one.
A very long list.
Okay.
But I'm gonna keep it short.
Mm-hmm.
So, someone who is a provider, someone who is caring,
okay,
someone who is sensitive, someone who is comfortable in his manhood.
Okay.
Whatever that is, but
right. Okay.
No, what I'm saying is he must know that he is male.
Okay.
And he doesn't need me to remind him that he is male.
Okay. Yes, so not insecure.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I say that because of the nature of my job.
Right.
I don't want the person who is going to ask me where you're going, what you're going to do, who you're going with, when you're coming back, where you're going, how long is it going to take, who you're going with.
Okay.
Not into that.
Right.
But he must be very comfortable in who he is.
So not controlling.
Right. Someone who is someone I can trust.
Yes.
And can, in return exhibit that level of trust. Someone who is sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
So you're male and you're masculine, but you are sensitive.
Definitely. So I hear some
very saved.
Very saved. Boy, I hear that stress on the very for the safe part there. It's just that, right?
Very saved. Someone who is, he's not flippant. I mean, he's not here today, gone tomorrow. You make a decision and you stand by a decision, that kind of thing.
Right.
And someone who stimulates my intellect.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Right up there at the top. So I'm going to stop there.
You're going to stop there. All right. Because, quite a number of questions coming. But let me
I concur.
Let me take one more individual. Anybody else at all? I see a hand and I'm not so sure. That would be your hand, Carlene. Go ahead.
I keep hearing the word very saved. I would like my ladies to expand on that, very saved. What does that mean to be very saved?
Okay. I think I understand what they mean, but they should proceed to explain that very, very saved concept. Anybody? Like Sherry-Ann, yes, Sherry-Ann. Very saved.
All right. So let me try to see how best I can explain from my perspective what that means. So, there are people out there who will tell you that they're saved, and, Christianity kind of rolls off the lips these days. A lot of people will say, yeah, man, I'm a Christian. And some of them, they're in church with you. They come to prayer meeting with you, the whole works, but they don't have a personal relationship with God. They do not, in church, they're one person, at home, they're another. Not just at home, on the job, they're another. Other persons who Christ is really not their priority. For me, and I've said this before, and I'll say it like, it keeps coming to me. I want a man who loves God more than he loves me. Because if you love God and you strive to do what God wants you to do, and to me, be the man that God wants you to be, I don't have to worry about him. being the man who he needs to be to me. You know, somebody who will allow Christ to love me through him. And I don't want to take it to somebody who's super saved where y'all spirited and you can't have a proper conversation with them. I don't mean that. I don't mean somebody who spiritualized everything. Let's take it there.
Yeah.
Or somebody who, you know, they're in tongues all the time.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. So
that's not what I mean.
Yeah. So in general, I think that the sense is, so, you know, if you are saved, if you're a Christian, you must not just be a Christian in the name or in word, but you also need to actually be living out that Christianity in the home, in your relationships, in your family, you know, whatever you are. Church is the same that you are at home, you know, and not the kind of as we say, not people who are Christian, but they are struggling too much with too many sinful issues. Sir Andrew, I see your hand was up, but I want to, as after you, Sir Barnett, I want to, because I know that Mr. Scott is going to have to leave us shortly, but I see here a discrepancy based on what I'm hearing from the ladies. Of course, versus, you know, where our men are at, and I see some things coming up here. For example, I hear insecurity coming up here. You know, the woman is working and I'm not working, and of course there's a, you know, global issue in terms of men, you know, being able to find a kind of a job, some stuff that they never really had any control over, but they now end up at the bottom of the rung. And so now the women are way ahead of them. You know, how do we, what is the nature of the conversation? How do you counsel it? So I'm going to get to Sir Scott. How do you counsel it? You know, this male who is struggling, you know, in his relationship with a female, you know, who is just saying that he's insecure. He's not working as much as she is working. He's not as big on the providing part, even though he has other talents and he feels a sense of insecurity. But Sir Barnett, let me share with us. I see your hand is up.
It was probably more a question than anything else. I was listening to Mr. Scott earlier, and I hear a general sense of, I don't know if I'm wrong, I'm wondering.
Yes.
But am I hearing that, okay, so those folks that choose not to go the traditional route in terms of employment at 9 to 5, we're talking about men, you know, and their passion and that kind of thing.
Right.
Are we saying that, you know, a guy who decides, so, well, you know, I'm not into the 9 to 5, I'm more into the performing arts.
Okay.
All right, I'm more into the performing arts. It might not have a steady flow of in terms of income. Are we saying that there's an issue with him and his masculinity, one? Secondly, I've seen some situations, I haven't seen any locally. I don't know if, I guess maybe it does happen where there's a kind of a role reversal in the traditional sense, where the male, the husband, opt to stay at home to do the fathering and the housework and all that kind of stuff, while the female, you know, she's the one going to work. But the family does seem to be working fine. Everything seems to be going well. I mean, except that the male is not working, there don't seem to be an issue in the family. Is there a crisis there? Or is it that, okay, that's one of those, you know, society, culture being dynamic and changes are taking place that, you know, that we just have to accept some of these changes and just don't necessarily, you know, necessarily shun them. And thirdly, again, a question I want to ask as well is, are we saying that, I know it's a Christian forum, are we saying then that the male, the masculinity, the male must be, it has to be an individual that is a devout Christian, or else he is not masculine? And I ask against the concept that I'm thinking, I'm remembering as a youngster growing up, I can recall my grandfather. I mean, I never set foot in a church for as far as I can remember. But if you take that aspect away from it, I think for the most part, he would have satisfied most of the criteria that I'm hearing now being mentioned in terms of masculinity, it just doesn't fulfill that going to church role. So are we saying then that a part of being masculine must be that you must be an ardent, follower of Christ? If not, then you just disqualify altogether in terms of this whole masculinity thing.
All right, that's all like a triple barrel question. But Sir Scott, see if you can clarify some of Andrew's concerns regarding, and I guess all of these revolve around some additional dimensions to what masculinity is. So let's start with the one with the traditional occupation. So a man he's not doing the traditional occupation. Does that take away from his identity? Let's start with that one. Your mic, you can open your mic, Sir Scott. Let's see if that. Open your. That's right. There we go. Yes.
No, I was saying earlier on that no, I wouldn't say if a man is not doing the traditional work route, he's not a man. And that is one of the things I share. That, and especially the dynamics in which we live now. Rapidly changing world and with the exposure of the internet and all of that. As I said, things are rapidly changing. So
yes.
I wouldn't man doesn't have a steady 9-to-5 job. He's not a man. Earlier. And so that's one of the direction we have to go now. To find people who not going the traditional 9-to-5, but they have skills and ability that can make them.
Okay. All right. So that's one.
The regular job, but to be able to earn something, because at the end of the day, you still want to earn, no matter what you're doing.
Yes.
Concerning the society, especially abroad, where we see so much happening. I mean, when you're talking about family these days, it's not even man and woman, but you have man and man and woman and so on. But if two individuals come together and say, okay, I can earn more in the workspace, and for the family at this point in time, let me go to work and you stay home and do some other things. And the man would have to have those skills and quality. Because remember, at the end of the day, a family is a team. A team. And so at this point in time, what I would say, if that become the norm over a long period of time, then I don't think it can be.
Okay.
At times, then you might say, okay, I can earn some more money now. I will go in the workspace, you stay at home. But if it now become wild for the rest of my life, this is how it's going to be. I don't think that would be the ideal and healthy family. But I come to the point, and I would say yes. In terms of what my sisters were talking about, probably would call it Christian maturity, mature Christian. Can a man be a man and carry out many other things without being a mature Christian? And I would say yes, he can carry out some things. But in the analysis, I think spirituality is very, very important, and understanding that of who he is in the eyes of God, why God created him, the role God created him for, and what is expected. So a person can carry out many of those functions, without, as you say, having a relationship with God.
Okay.
Analysis to make that person complete.
Yes.
Then, as I wrap up, as I said, boy, we have a spiritual struggle. A lot of things out here is a spiritual battle, and it's taking place, as you say, in our own space, in other spaces.
All right, your mic is going. I think we're struggling with your mic again, Sir Scott.
Yeah, until you can really back into some relationship with God, we're still going to have these struggles, no matter what society.
Right.
That's my firm belief, and my understanding, and that's where I would come from. So I would say, regardless of what we do, at the end of the day, if a man finding identity in God,
yes,
in not a complete man, That's my.
Okay. All right. So the final question that I wanted to get from you, Sir Scott, before we based on what we've said, of course, we realize that there are different expressions of manhood based on all that you said, choosing different types of career from traditional career, being the one that's at the home taking care. How would you then counsel with one of these individuals who are struggling then with their manhood, their masculinity, since that it is not conforming to, and this is not just the biblical model, but society, a large portion of secular society have this expectation of the male as the provider. And we have many males for one reason or the other not fulfilling that.
Yeah.
So you can't call this, so they are being accused of not being a man. How do we work with or counsel with somebody in an identity crisis of not being not accused of not being a man because of all the complexities that we're living in now?
It's a struggle, and as you know, in our society, many of our boys don't have role models. We might not even have father figure, but at least there were some role models. I grew up without a father myself. One of the good things it teach me when I decided to have a family, I said, well, one of the first things I'm not going to do is to have children and not being there for them. All right. And so part of that, though, what helped me along the way, there were some people at the time I didn't see them, but along the way they were role models. In other words, they came into my life, they helped me along, and they did things. I remember my principal from high school struggling, almost get kicked out of school because I couldn't pay the fees. But he sat me down in his office and said, I'm going to help you. And he did what he could and put me back on track. So I believe when I counsel with some of these men, I have to ask them, do you have any role model? Do you have anybody you look up to? And can these persons help you along? Because like I said, many men who I counsel come in with wounded because they don't have a father in their life and never have somebody who can teach them the way. So
yeah, but some people have dog paw, Sir Scott. I mean, some people have dog, I don't understand. Some people have dog paw, and these are men who are modeling in the communities. I mean, in ways that, manly man look like, when you get one of these guys, how do you guide them towards an identity? I mean, they will say that they're the real men right there.
And it's a struggle, as you say. It's not easy to do.
Yes.
And it's a process. It's a process. But
yes,
I think at the end of the day, one have to be. When I counsel with them, I try to be genuine. I tell them, yes, Christian men have struggled. It don't mean that we not lost sometime or we not this sometime, but it's how you bring that under control. And in a sense, be a kind of a role model for them if you can. The thing about it, we're not going to change everybody,
Sure.
We can't change everybody.
Right.
If you can help even one individual or two individuals, then I believe in the long run, as it say, your life will be worth living. So I don't think we can do a mass fix, but if you can take one or two and impact them and help them along the way, then I think it would have made it will make a difference. And in the life of one or two.
Right.
That's my take on it.
Yes. Thank you, Sir Scott. So if we are looking to the again within the the context of the church, and where our men are, the consensus here seems to be to point our men towards a certain direction, and that direction seems to revolve still around the classic male provider protector role. And if men are not fitting into the classic provider protector role, so it does appear that we have some work to do in trying to paint that an effective picture of that probably in our Bible study or so, but also in our find proper role models for our men in this regard. Lady Smith, I see your hand. All right.
Sir, I'm just asking a question on behalf of Patrick.
Yes.
He says that he has an original question, and he says, first question is, if the woman makes more than the man, should she still allow the man to play the major role in how the income is spent, which is the case traditionally?
All right. All right. So Sir Scott is going to see his mic is open. So yes.
Again, as I said earlier on, you have to look at it as a team. If you can't say marriage as a team, then you're going to be in difficulty. Sometimes it's not who make the most money, but who is a better financial controller, for a better word I use. It's hard if a woman go out there and work, and then when she put the money in the bank, the man is going to say how it ought to be spent and so on. But I wouldn't look at it from that perspective. I look at it and say, this is the resource the family have.
Yes.
How best can we maximize it to benefit the family? If it's not being done in that way, then you have a problem.
Yes.
But if it's being done in that way, to say, boy, this is what we have, we know what we have to take out for certain things. At the end of the day, the family must come first. And the resources that we garner is for the benefit of the family. Whether the man bring it in or the woman bring it in, I believe that is how one should approach it. And it ought to be a team effort at the end of the day to say, boy, we're part of the same team.
Yes.
Once we start the competition and say, who is this and who is that? The key word in marriage is we. Instead of me. Always have to go back to that. It have to be we. Anyway, as I said to you, I have an engagement. I have to shift out. But thanks again for...
Thanks. Yes, thanks for helping us out, sir.
Yeah, man. And God bless. And
yes.
You take care.
Right. Lady Carlene, I see your hand. Yeah, your hand is up.
Yes, I was just going to agree with Brother Scott, what he said. It doesn't matter who makes the more money, because you're working as a team. And when it comes to a spiritual home, a Christian home, there should not be any competition, because the Lord said the two become one. So the two become one. Why should there be a competition?
Yeah.
Between who makes the more money or who stays home and take care of the kids? It should not be that way, but society paints it that way. Society said, if you're not the man and making X amount of money, then you're not a man. But we have as women have to realize that when we choose a mate, we have to make sure that that mate knows who he is as a man, so that society is not what he's looking to tell him who and what kind of man he is. Right? And as a Christian home, we are to look to God for our examples of how we're supposed to be as a couple and as a family, especially when kids are involved. You need to make sure that whatever situation you're going through, that God is the head of the house. And then after God, then the male, and after the male, the female. Because God made Adam from the earth, but he made Eve from the rib of Adam. So he didn't make Eve from the earth as well, right? So that is why he says that the male have dominion, but the male is supposed to love his wife as Christ loved the church and give his life for the church. So since that is what we're basing our Christian walk on, then our relationship should be bounded and wrapped in that way. That's the way that we're supposed to look at how we are raising our young men as they grow up as a family, as a Christian family. Yeah.
Right. So if we if we are looking for the a core identity, what does it mean to be male? I don't know that we can escape reverting to God's model, because there really is no, the society, of course, is finding their own way. Men, as I said in the passionate model, men are trying to just find their own way, to find their own identity, and of course are coming up with many different versions of what their identity should be. Women's identity seems to be a little bit more grounded, because particularly because of the fact that they are childbearing. There's no confusion about that aspect of their identity. But with men, it seems to be the field is wide. So it doesn't appear that we can escape from acknowledging that a spiritual root and a groundedness in a divine model of what men should be is like, we can't escape that, and that's the way to go. Now, this study that I had said a couple of things, and we're coming down to the end of the conversation. It painted the problem. I said the replacement of spiritual leadership by a leadership defined by masculine machismo is actually the problem, right? And he had gone on to make the point that evangelical preachers and teachers and people in society unwittingly reinforce the old interpretation of leadership as a function of masculine competition. In other words, you're not a man if you're not running into the fire to rescue people from 9/11. You're not going to war. So it's the male machismo kind of a identity that seems to have been perpetrated. But this author had pointed to the fact that the problem was a replacement of spiritual leadership, that men did not have an identity of their, connected with their maker, connected with the purpose that they were made for, to have dominion, and that sort of a thing. And so it does appear that at the core of the male identity is a restoration to spiritual leadership. Not, as Sir Andrew said, you don't have to be a Christian to be a male, or to feel a male identity, but there are some values that also would have probably your grandfather would have exhibited, that were that were morally straight, as opposed to the deviance that we are dealing with today, that represents that kind of a leadership that would have come from God. And I think that we can't escape that identity for male masculinity. But let me just canvass for any additional thoughts on the issue, how do we help our males, particularly those who are kind of struggling with an identity? How do we help our males to be confident in themselves as a man, be confident in their identity, in their masculinity? I am not working, and my wife is working more than me, but I don't feel less of a man. How do we move those men who are just not connected with anything towards a clearer picture of male? Is there a role for education in school, for example? Sir Andrew, as a teacher, I saw that one out too. Is there a role in the school? Is there a role in Sunday school? We're a place where these values, identity, can be made clear and consistently reinforced, so that we can move our men forward.
I think it's certain. There is any kind of meaningful change that we aim to make has to be rooted in education.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to wait until it gets to the dark past stage, then it's not going to change. As we say in Jamaica, you can't bend the tree when it's old. And so we have got to take it to the level now. We should be talking to our boys in basic school. all right, about this whole masculinity. So by the time they are exposed to the DJs, they already formed an idea of what masculinity is.
Yeah.
So you might just listen to the song just for the sake of the physical exercise it provides, but it is not shaping the impression, the identity, right?
Yes.
But then, because society as it is doesn't necessarily align itself to the Bible. The church, therefore, will have to play a greater role. And I think this is, in my opinion, I think this is where the crisis is. All right, where certain things, what the church is emphasized, as you said in this last quote here, a lot of times I see the church is emphasizing the whole macho thing. That is what the church is emphasizing. And I think more effort needs to be spent, given that the context in Jamaica is one where majority of the homes are missing a male role model. All right, so within the church context, there have to be more attempt at what you call that thing now, mentoring. All right, we have to have more of our young boys being schooled by the leaders in the church, assuming, of course, that the person that are in leadership don't have some twisted ideologies of masculinity, because if you have that case, then that's going to make a bad situation worse. All right, but we have to have that teaching taking place in Sunday school. It might mean that you pull the boys aside from time to time. All right, as leaders, it's not just the individual designated pastor. But if you can get some men that are well-grounded and they suit the biblical principle and they are balanced and everything like that, you can get some of those guys to mentor or some of those leaders to mentor our boys. Then that could start a kind of a change.
Yeah.
And that we'd love to see. But because a lot of times, in my opinion, I don't see it happening in the church. All right, it's just the regular message on a Sunday. All right, which more often than that, our boys are completely disattached from. All right, doesn't resonate with them much. We have to take them once and model for them. They have to have the model there to show them, okay, then, this is what things are like, this is how it should be, so on and so forth. And then you do that early enough, so hopefully by the time they grow up with that kind of ideology, they in turn will pass it on to their sons when they are born. And then we can probably start to see maybe a slower change towards things, but there's definitely no quick fix. And we have got to correct some of the cultural misconceptions are some of the, I think my time based on culture, we kind of butcher some of our males. All right, by expecting them to hold up to some of these norms that are not even biblical. But society has said this is what a man is and this is what a man is, and we hold them to that. So we have to correct some of that. So I hear some people say that the guy must be emotional, emotionally secure, that kind of thing. But at the same time, a guy showing support, emotional support is then deemed by some as being too effeminate. So I have to fix some of those things, and then hopefully that will lead us to some kind of change. We can fix the masculinity. So for females, I have 2 young daughters. I love when they get to that stage, they can find decent men that they can call husband. All right, and so hopefully we can get to that stage.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the goals of this particular conversation is to try and paint a clearer picture because of what it means to be a man, and then take that image, that message, as you're saying, because unless it goes through a system of education and mentoring and modeling, we're not going to get the change that we are seeing. And I don't want the conversation to go without really us, when we do that training, when we do that Sunday school, what is that image? Because we clarified it, we focused on the provider and the protector. But of course, it came out very clearly, in the response of the ladies, is that, to be a male, they also have to, correct some of those emotional deficiencies that that tend towards what male look like. If you're the provider or the protector, somehow it seems that you need to be emotionally detached. You seem to not be able to have a strict conversation without watching the football game or the basketball game. You know, those things that are connected with the conventional male identity needs to be corrected, so that it, you know, we also attach men to being emotional, even though to having emotions, even though we may not express them the same way as women. We need to connect male identity properly again with spirituality, so that you know your spirituality is at the root of your identity, so that when the job goes, you still feel a sense of dominion because you're made for dominion. You still feel a sense of leadership because you can still model God. So that we formulate our masculinity in ways that, you know, everybody who is not considered or doesn't look like they're fitting the traditional role can still fit into God's model, and then from there move toward the new job, move towards the relationship, move toward the family. So I think rooted and grounded in the male identity, the male reflection of the image of God, you know, and once we have that rooted down there properly, as the ladies are saying, not, you know, not partial Christian, but true Christians, you know, having their identity connected intimately with who God is and who God made them to be, then we can move forward with the protection, we can move forward with the provision, we can move forward with getting an emotional balance, etc., etc. So I think, you know, if we don't get anything from this conversation, we want to get a clear picture of male identity connected to divinity, you know, connected to dominion, connected to modeling God as leader, rather than ruling over women or ruling over children as leader. If we model God, then you know what God's role is and you model it for your. So if we paint an effective picture, then I think through our education system, we intentionally teach it in our Sunday school, intentionally teach this model in our Bible studies, and intentionally, you know, take the, you know, answer those questions and disciple men into masculinity. Lady Smith, I see your hand up, and we are closing in 2 minutes. Yes.
Yes, sorry. Just one concern that came in, that in the whole education process, the females also have to be educated towards the change that's happening. So we're teaching our boys and teaching our men. Okay, then this is what it is to be masculine. We also have to, quote unquote, re-educate the woman also, because when the change comes and us females are expecting based on what we have been taught, it's not that, then we the women turn around and even more so lessen the sense of masculinity of the men. So yes, right. So he's saying that, you know, the whole thing of women making men less men also has to be addressed.
Very, very important point to make, that it you know, and I'm sure Sir Andrew would also agree that in the education process, it is not just necessarily taking the men aside and, you know, trying to get, and then of course the ladies are completely, you know, the gender conversation has to involve everybody, because, you know, particularly single mothers have to kind of have that clear picture of what that image is, and to help with your sons, and also allow them as women to transition and to accept what you know, what the true masculinity is and the true male is, so that they don't make some demands of men in ways that are inconsistent with what they should. So I think that's an important addition to it. Lady Mavor, and I'm not so sure if I pronounce your name right. Welcome to our conversation. I see you said that it would be burden on one be a burden on one party, especially the children are the family. But I wasn't able to place that in the where that point in the conversation. So I don't know if you wanted to make that clearer for us, but I'm just noting your comment in the chat room. And so in closing with everybody, any final comments on this whole issue of a masculinity, and as a society in general, and in particular as a church, where do we go with this whole masculinity issue? Any final comments on what it is to be male? Going once. All right. I want to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Scott in his absence for sharing with us. We're going to try to put together something, some documentation regarding this, to serve kind of as a guide if you have friends, young men who seem to be kind of disconnected, to kind of put together something tangible in terms of helping them to connect with themselves as men. And it will not, as we say, be for just the men, we'll also provide it with the women, that this is the real expectation that we should have of men in society, and in particular men in the church, that I think will help us out. So God bless you. Thank you for being a part of our conversation. You can open your mics and just greet somebody. And the information is on our website. Will be on our website at agapeapostolic.info, so that you can go back and reflect on. Thank you, Lady Carleen, for being here. Sir Patrick, I see you. Rafian, I see you. Thank you for reaching out to us and being a part of our extended community. And Lady Celia, thank you, Tanisha, Sherry-Ann, and the rest of us who are normally. I see iPhone, I don't know if that is surfing, but thank you all, God bless you. Yes. And just open your mic and just greet somebody before you leave tonight.
Yes, God bless everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Bless you too. Thanks for being here. Blessings, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Great.
Take care.
Good night, everyone.
All right, great. Good night.